Today, we're going to talk about women in Warhammer. If, from the title of this video, you expected a controversial conversation in any way, I gotcha. You have fallen for my ruse. For today, we will be solely discussing the extreme badassery of the Adeptus Sororitas, aka the Sisters of Battle, previously known as the Daughters of the Emperor, and then the Brides of the Emperor, and then the Daughters of the Emperor again, and then the other names that I said before, that those are their names now. They've had a lot of names. I'll explain why. But before I do that, I want to clarify that I know there are plenty of interesting female characters in 40k aside from the Adeptus Sororitas. We have the Sisters of Silence, a very cool faction. We have Euphrates Keeler, the first saint of the Cult Imperialis. Hell, we even have Ivrain, who's a filthy, disgusting alien. But she's still pretty cool. I mean, there's even a ton of cool characters within the Sororitas that we won't get to in today's video, and I do plan on making videos about all of them in the near future. So subscribe if you want to see those, alongside countless other Warhammer projects that I'm working on right now. Okay, let's get to it. The Adeptus Sororitas, also commonly called the Sisters of Battle, are an all-female division of the Ecclesiarchy, the Imperium state church which promotes the worship of the Emperor of Mankind as the one true God of humanity. Now, if we're getting technical, the Sisters of Battle title is only used for the Order's militant of the Adeptus Sororitas. That is to say, the totally terrifying badass women you've been seeing pictures of in the video so far are the militant side of the entire Adeptus Sororitas organization, which also includes non-militant members. To be fair though, the Sisters of Battle are the sole public-facing aspect of the Adeptus Sororitas, and thus the only aspect of the organization that members of the Imperium are aware of. While the Imperium of Mankind has many different organizations and military groups to deal with different threats throughout the galaxy, such as Chaos and Xenos, the Adeptus Sororitas is tasked specifically in dealing with those who reject the God Emperor's light, and thus curse themselves to the abhorrent existence of being a disgusting heretic. Keep in mind, the Emperor, who absolutely refused to be revered as a god, has been in his zombie era for 10,000 years, and thus can't tell people to stop worshipping him. So, the Adeptus Sororitas get to travel around the galaxy throwing hands with anyone who chooses not to worship him, which is what he actually wants people to do. Funny how that works. But hey, they look pretty badass, so I'm not complaining. So, why are the Adeptus Sororitas the only militant force of the Ecclesiarchy in the 41st millennium? Let's go down a fun little historical rabbit hole. Heads up, there's also a lot of super Warhammer-y terms coming up, which I will try to explain as best as I can. The story of the Adeptus Sororitas as we know begins in the 36th millennium, during the Age of Apostasy. The Age of Apostasy was a period of time in which the Ecclesiarchy was overrun with internal corruption. The Ecclesiarchy is the organization within the Imperium that oversees the Cult Imperialis, the official state religion which posits that the Emperor is the one true god of humanity. Simultaneously, within the Adeptus Administratum, the official bureaucratic organization within the Imperium, a man of tremendous moral ambiguity, which is putting it lightly, named Goj Vandire, was gaining power. In fact, he was eventually elected the 361st Master of the Administratum, and thus began the Reign of Blood, a 100-year-long brutal period of imperial history wherein Vandire, having now also gained direct control of the Ecclesiarchy, placed himself in the most powerful position throughout the entire Imperium, even usurping the position of the Emperor, who was at the time about 6,000 years into his zombie era. Vandire used his newfound incredible power to purge countless members of the Ecclesiarchy and various other organizations within the Imperium, essentially eliminating anyone he personally branded a heretic or traitor. Early in Vandire's century-long tyrannical rule, word was sent to him of a fanatical sisterhood of female warriors who lived on the world of San Lior. These women, at the time calling themselves the Daughters of the Emperor, lived in absolute dedication to the Emperor of Mankind, worshipping him as their deity, as did the entire Imperium. And as they should, because, you know, if you don't, you're a heretic. Vandire decided to visit these warrior women, arriving unannounced on San Lior and having his guard take him directly to the convent where these women lived. Originally refusing to see him, as they felt no one could speak on behalf of the Emperor as Vandire claimed he did, he simply requested that they allow him to prove he held the Emperor's blessing, a request which the women hesitantly accepted. Standing in their courtyard, Vandire ordered Alicia Dominica, the leader of the Daughters of the Emperor, to shoot him with a lasgun. Unbeknownst to these warrior women, Vandire held in his hand his Rosarius, a sacred item worn by members of the Ecclesiarchy, which houses a protective conversion field emitter capable of blocking both physical and psychic attacks. When Dominica reluctantly shot him, the Rosarius dramatically reflected the bolt with a blinding flash of light, and the daughters of the Emperor immediately swore their allegiance to Vandyre, believing the Emperor had intervened to save his life. Soon thereafter, Vandyre made the daughters of the Emperor his personal guard, and they were renamed to the Brides of the Emperor. As Vandyre's century-long tyrannical rule wore on, and his madness became ever more apparent, a Reformation movement led by a relatively unknown priest within the imperial cult named Sebastian Thor began to gain traction. When news of this movement of opposition against him reached Vandyre, he retaliated immediately, sending a fleet to crush the small rebellion and assassinate Thor, but the entire fleet was destroyed in a warp storm, which soon thereafter became known as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath, as many believed that the Emperor had personally intervened to save Thor's life and allow the rebellion to continue. This event was the catalyst, and the movement against Vandyre erupted across the galaxy. At this point, a coalition strike force of Space Marines from the Imperial Fists, the Black Templars, the Firehawks, and the Soul Drinkers was formed to launch an assault on Terra itself, with the goal of assassinating Vandyre and restoring Imperial rule. You know you messed up when the personal warriors of the most bloodthirsty government in the galaxy think you're too bloodthirsty. Especially if one of those chapters of warriors literally call themselves the Soul Drinkers, and they're like, dude, you're too crazy. Like, we're literally out here drinking souls, and you're doing too much over there. You gotta stop. The Space Marines, however, were unaware of the sheer strength and capability of the Brides of the Emperor, who remained steadfast in their protection of Vandyre, still believing him to be acting on behalf of the Emperor. The Space Marines therefore launched one of their signature drop pod assaults, expecting a quick and easy victory. What they were faced with, however, was the sheer nightmare of facing the Brides of the Emperor in battle. Though smaller and less powerful than the Space Marines, they were still clad in highly capable power armor and were superbly trained, perhaps the only human fighting force in the galaxy that could hold a candle to the Astartes. The Space Marines Assault Coalition found themselves bogged down, losing many Marines in the process, and for months the assault dragged on, with the Brides of the Emperor repelling every attack. Finally, a member of the Adeptus Custodes named Centurion Longinus decided there was only one way for this conflict to end. As a member of the Praetorian Guard of the Emperor, Longinus was able to take Alicia Dominica and 5 of her fellow warriors into the inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace to witness the God Emperor of mankind himself, immobile and decaying on the Golden Throne, aka in his zombie era. It is unknown exactly what transpired during this time in the inner sanctum or what information was shared, but when Dominica and her personal guard emerged back through the Eternity Gate, it is said that their eyes burned with an unparalleled level of anger and hatred. They now knew that for the past 100 years, Vandyre had lied to them. Dominica and her contingent marched directly to Vandyre's chambers, surrounding him, and Dominica raised her power sword above his head. Vandyre supposedly at that point spoke his last words, stating, "I don't have time to die. I'm too busy." Dominica clearly disagreed and brought her power sword down upon him, shearing through the protective conversion field of his Rosarius and separating his head from his body. With that, the battle between the Brides of the Emperor and the Astartes was over, and the brutal reign of blood was at its end. So let's do a quick little recap. Not only did Alicia Dominica, an unenhanced moral human, overpower the immensely powerful protective shield used by Vandyre that could withstand almost any physical or psychic attack, but even more impressively, the Brides of the Emperor had held back a multiple months-long siege by the Adeptus Astartes, including the chapter that literally lives on an eternal crusade in the name of the God Emperor, like the most fanatically pro-Emperor Marines in the galaxy. And they did that all without the gene seed of any Primarch. #girlboss. In the time following Vandyre's execution and the restoration of truth and justice within the Imperium, Sebastian Thor was elected to the position of Ecclesiarch, putting him in charge of the Ecclesiarchy. Basically, Space Pope. Thor was reluctant to accept this position, however, as he felt his true calling was to spread the word of the God Emperor throughout the galaxy, and thus listed a number of requests that would have to be implemented were he to assume the role of Ecclesiarch. Perhaps his most important change was to eliminate the Frateris Templar, the all-male militant wing of the Ecclesiarchy, and create a brand new militant wing in its place, the Adeptus Sororitas, which was comprised entirely of the members of the Brides of the Emperor. This move worked out tremendously for everyone, especially the fanatically devoted warriors of the Adeptus Sororitas, who could now be assured that they were fighting on behalf of the Emperor himself. In the 5 millennia since their founding following the Reign of Blood, the Adeptus Sororitas have seen their fair share of conflict, sometimes fighting alone, and other times joining forces with various Astartes chapters to purge the galaxy of heretic threats. As I mentioned earlier, the Adeptus Sororitas employ similar armor to that used by the 1,000 chapters of the Astartes. Sororitas power armor, originally created in the Great Forges of Mars, provides excellent protection and increased strength to its wearer, with virtually no reduction in a Sister of Battle's speed or agility. Unlike their Astartes cousins, the Sisters of Battle are not surgically enhanced with a black carapace, the neuroreactive fibrous material implanted under the skin of an Astartes that allows him to fully interact with his power armor. The preferred primary weapon of many members of the Adeptus Sororitas is the bolt gun, namely the Godwin Diaz pattern bolter. a bolt gun designed specifically for the Sisters of Battle, though flamers and multi-meltas may also be employed by certain weapon specialists within the order. Now, perhaps the most interesting tactical equipment, quote-unquote, employed by the Sisters is not a physical item at all, as it is in fact their extreme devotion to the Emperor himself. This tremendous, unmatched faith in the Emperor's divinity has often rewarded the Sisters of Battle in battle, providing them with some level of holy protection against the dark forces that oppose humanity. And that sums up the Adeptus Sororitas, aka the legendary Sisters of Battle, the Emperor's most devout warriors. Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, please let me know if you liked it by either leaving a comment or a like or even subscribing. And let me know what you want to see next. Bye!